Good evening. This is the Chicago Computer Society South Suburban Computer Club for April 2025. I hope everybody has a good meeting here and learn some real tidbits. Uh, I'm going to open up the forum right now to problems, questions, issues, uh, news that some of us may not know about. Tips too. Anybody? Come on, guys. I already got three. I even had to write myself a note. Otherwise, I'd forget probably one or two of them. Come on. Do I got to twist arms physically? All right. I'm going to start off with something that perhaps can get the ball rolling. I ain't betting on it, but hang swimming. I gotta turn on some and turn off some settings. If I don't, eventually it'll bite me.
Mhm.
This is one of the headaches of hosting. Okay. Now, I'm going to come over here to start button. Good old settings. This applies to 11. It does not apply to anything prior to 11. In fact, it doesn't apply to any version of 11 prior to 23H2. But if you're on 23H2 or 20, which is coming to end of support, or either end of this month or next month, I'm not sure which. I forget the exact month. And 24H2 has a 2. You come in to your settings, go to system, scroll down, and go into recovery. This here feature will do an in-place online uh, update to your system in case you have problems, but your system has to be running to use this feature. And it will not disturb your data or installed programs unless you tell it to. So you can do a clean install even with it. But this feature used to exist in Windows XP. Then it just disappeared until the last two versions here of 11. How and why it came back, good luck figuring that one out. Microsoft, I don't think, knows why they brought it back. Uh,
So, Tim, you mean that without downloading the install media, you can now, if you have an intact recovery partition, you can do an in place over the top recovery?
it has nothing to do with a recovery partition.
Okay.
In other words, this works similar to the update assistant. If you go out to Microsoft
Yeah.
Media Creation Tool, one of the first options is to update from with the assistant,
Hmm.
which will download directly out of the cloud and put it on your system for a complete install. This works in a similar fashion,
Yeah.
except you don't have to go to Media Creation Tool to do this particular feature of repairing.
Okay.
And at the same time, too, uh, you can still download the ISO image, mount it in File Explorer, and do in-place upgrade. without losing your data, etc., unless you want it to. And then you have the external USB drive or CD, DVD, ROM drive that you can create and use that inside the running system. If you boot off of those two from the outside of a running Windows system, it will only do a clean install. And that means whatever you got, if you ain't got it backed up, tough luck. Now, one of the other little quirks of Windows I found out more recently within the last week or so. When it comes to speed test, if you use your smartphone, tablet, uh, Linux, odds are you're going to be okay with your speed test versus what you're paying your ISP for. Windows has an overhead and may penalize you to some degree on your speed test results. So it may look like you're paying more and getting less on many Windows systems. It's not consistent as to how much. It will vary from a little bit to quite a bit. I've run into some people that they should be getting at least 600 megabits per second, and they may be getting half that.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever been half that, but it's a possibility. But you have an overhead that might cause you this degradation in your internet performance and probably will resurrect its head when you least desire to have that happen. Like
Now, Tim, is this reduction in speed a reduction in your network inside your home, or is it a reduction in the speed out to the internet?
my understanding is out to the internet on all the speed tests. The speed tests that I'm aware of only work out, they find a local server to where you are to connect to, and it may change from time to time. Now, sometimes you get good responsiveness from the ISP that you're connecting to on a speed test, and sometimes you get a lousy one. And I have had that happen to even me. Whereas if I have a bad speed test to the internet
Mm-hmm.
and get out of that, come back into it, and it selects a different server to connect to, all of a sudden it's real good. So
Okay.
you have both conditions there, besides a slight penalty with the Windows itself that you don't see in Linux and you don't see in smartphones
Mm-hmm.
and tablets by and large.
Okay, what I'm getting through a Google speed test, even with Zoom running, is 843.7 upload and download and 18.2 upload. Not the best upload speed, but good download.
Well, the upload speeds vary from vendor to vendor, and they're not as good unless you have optic fiber. Then they're great.
Yeah.
But your 800, how much are you paying for?
Let's see, is it 250 or 270 a month? But I have second
No,
room
not,
service, so it's 191 a month
yeah, but
basic.
I mean the service speed.
What? Oh, the speed? Nominally up to a
Okay.
gigabit.
Now, a little bit of your speed loss there down to 800
Yeah.
could be the server you're connecting to, and it can be a part of Windows. It's not usually just one thing. It's usually a combination.
Yeah, my connection
Um,
was Boston to New York.
Now, are you using Speed Test as an app, a browser window, or the client?
I've used both.
Mine is through the browser.
Because I just ran speed test in a browser, and I ran speed test. I have the CLI version, which is just it runs in a DOS command prompt,
Mhm.
and it's the same speed test, and you get much better, more accurate numbers. I get over 700 down on Windows, but only when I use the DOS version, not the browser version, because the browser is going to put in overhead already by itself.
Right.
Yeah, it
I,
does.
I think that's where it partly comes in. Windows may penalize you because it also depends upon the browser you're using, what it may impose upon. So it's all lots of little features, but that's more noticeable, it seems like, in Windows.
Okay, now when I do Ookla through the browser, it says 1.24 megabits, 1.24 gigabits per second, and upload is 149 megabits. And the ping is 12, download something is 24, up something is 20.
And probably those two tests that you ran are to two different servers.
This is to Boston,
Like I
from
said, two
Boston.
different servers. You said the first one
Yeah,
was New York and the other one
yeah,
Boston. So
Boston.
they connected to different servers
Yep,
that can affect your speeds also.
yep. But in any event, I'm getting at least what I paid for.
Yeah, especially if you do it during commuting hours.
Now,
Yeah, that'll solve.
one other issue I've come up with, and this is a weird one, and it plays into recent meetings where we're bringing up Windows 10 and what your plans are for the future, considering the end of life of Windows 10. You got to watch what you wish for. And I'm not joking when I say it. I've got one machine that I discovered this quirk on, and I can't remember exactly when I did it, but it would be between the release of 22H2 and probably March or April of 23. And I haven't had time to get around to this machine. I just got around to it to try and upgrade it to 24H2, which is fully compliant machine. So the hardware is all there. Well, guess what? The Windows 10 that was originally on the system, and this is one I bought used, uh, I didn't look at it. Okay. I didn't care about it. I was just going to upgrade it to 11 and that's it. I upgraded it to 11 and it runs 22H2 perfectly fine. Well, it wouldn't touch 24H2 with a 10-foot pole. And same for 23H2. Hmm, something little bit screwy there. So I took what it gave me and I opened up disk management, which is in 10 and very similar to it in 11. And I looked at the drive, and at first it didn't pop out at me, but as I scrutinized it more, I realized I had to check one other thing. On the left side, where you got the block of defining each drive, like drive 0, drive 1, drive 2, etc. Right click in that, it'll bring up a dialog box. One of the tabs is volume. And in about the middle of the screen, it'll tell you that the volume is either MBR or
Hmm.
GPT. It was MBR. Then I look closer at the partition structure. There is no UEFI partition. That's the problem. I did a lot of research. came up with six possibilities, five or six possibilities of getting that changed. None of it was going to be easy. Well, I backed up the system with a complete verified disk image, which is fortuitous. I wanted to keep what I had on there. I just wanted to get up to 24H2. And I examined some of these alternatives, which I'm not going to go over here. They'd be over a lot of people's heads anyhow. None of them worked, but I have one that I haven't gotten to yet because I've been busy with so much else. It's not funny. Uh, so I've got one more to go in testing. Then you have to start looking at biting the bullet. And if it will convert it from MBR to GPT partition, then I have to use a partition tool to create a UEFI partition. Then I have to do an in-place upgrade to the 24H2, and it'll build the UEFI. And I'll have to change the BIOS from uh, secure boot disabled to secure boot on so that I can boot up off the new version. Barring that, the only way of doing this is I got to have a drive as big or bigger than the install drive as an external USB drive. I then have to use, at least in my case, the same backup software to take the C partition and back that up through a copy, not a image backup, but a copy of the partition content to the external drive. There's a reason for that. Then you have to do an absolute clean install to properly partition that whole drive and with UEFI and with GPT partitioning. Then you got the headache of copying all that stuff you did to the external drive back in and all the messages you're going to get about, I got a duplicate file here. Do you want me to replace it? Yes or no? Well, if you did the in place, you've only got the operating system. You got no programs or anything else going. So you're going to just copy all that data back and say no to duplicates. And if it gives you the option of saying no to all, great, because then it'll go faster and smoother. You don't have to worry about it. That's the only other option I would have other than doing a clean install and having to find and install all my programs, go through all the settings that I may have made that I can remember, and copies of the data files. So that's some of the fun things about if you're upgrading from 10 to 11, you got to know what you got up front. And it's best to try and after you do a full image backup, verify that it it is a good backup. Number two, don't use the built-in Windows backup program, even though it's still even in 11. Microsoft said, I think in 2018 or 19, don't use that utility. Go get a third-party utility to do your backups with. And that's a very good word of a warning because it does not have a verification capability built in. So you have to try and mount the backup from that and then restore several files, small ones, over the whole image And if it works, it was a good backup. If it doesn't work, you're got to do it all over again until you get it to work. Or you get a third-party tool. There are several free ones to use. There's still Macro Reflect 8 that's available. There's EasyS to do backup. And there's a few others, but you got to be careful. Some of them say free, but they're free to download. But if you want to do almost anything with them, you got to pay the piper.
Now, I don't know how this works or whether it works well, but I'm putting into chat a link to Minitool Partition Wizard, which claims it can do that conversion.
Yeah, but
Uh,
that's a paid for function, isn't it?
It may or may not be. I have had the paid edition, so I can't tell you.
I think it is, but I won't swear to it.
I
See, it used to be with Mini Tool, you didn't have to worry about it. It would convert automatically if you click on the link. There's a link that in the menu structure, MBR to GPT. You click on it, it converted it. That's it. Done, gone.
Now what I can find out is whether it's an included feature in the free
Now, the funny
versions.
part about it is the machine I'm on right now, even though it's had 11 on it since 11 came out to insiders uh, through 23H2, it's also non-GPT, non-UEFI. And
Actually, I think the Minitool Partition Wizard free may allow it.
all right, I'll look into it.
Let me make sure that this is a free feature.
It didn't come up in my research.
Okay.
Mini tool I thought of, and I already
Yeah.
tested that one out.
Partition conversion. Yeah. It says it is an included feature, but I don't know whether or not it's part of the Pro. Okay, anyway, I'll continue looking.
Okay. Now, anybody else got anything to put forward to the rest of us?
Uh, I have a question.
Uh,
I, from participating in Linux groups, I have heard and learned about Docker and Docker containers and how they work to enhance the ability to use Linux. I just found out, and I don't know if anybody else here knows, that Docker makes a version for Windows, and you
yes,
can actually run Docker servers on Windows.
yes, I knew about that, but I've never done it.
Yeah, I was curious because I
I
haven't tried
found
it yet myself.
I found out about it because I was doing some research into Docker, not Docker, various Linux servers, and a lot of them support Dockers containers, and it came up about Windows having a version as well. I don't know if it's as good or complete as it is on Linux, but it's worth something to look at.
Yeah, I think I'm going to experiment with it a little bit.
Now, oh, I know why. I forgot. Okay. And I'm gonna stop sharing on that. Okay. Now, is there anybody else that has questions or issues that maybe we can discuss or solve? Hearing nothing. Um, back and
The Minitool. It is a paid feature to convert the OS disk to
yeah,
GPT. It
I
is paid. It's part of their Pro edition.
yeah, I figured that. Uh, Back in February, I was hoping to get Drew to do a presentation. He gave another group, I believe it was Stug, back in February, but he got tied up and couldn't make it. So tonight, Drew's going to give a presentation on portable apps that may be of great interest to some folks, especially if you go and want to use other computers, even like at the library or something like that. You can bring along your favorite apps and run them right off of a flash drive.
Yep. All right. So, there we go. All right. So I'm going to start off by just sharing my screen and then hiding all of these controls. This is the website. It's called portableapps.com. And I'll throw that into the chat so you can navigate to it. And oops, control copy. Oh, I can't get to the chat right now. Sorry about that. Portableapps.com. Just as you can see it here. It's completely free. You can run browsers, you can run Thunderbird email, you can run I think this is the logo for one of those graphics programs, Office suites, and you can run it off of a cloud drive, such as a Dropbox or Google, a flash drive. You can run it locally on your computer or an or an external drive. It's free to you download a program that is version 30 right now, and you don't need to install anything into Windows. They do have a donation button, but you don't have to pay for anything. And when you download the software from Portable Apps, I don't know why it's not. It should have started the download, but there it is. This is the name of the program, portableapps.com platform setup. And you put that wherever you want to put it, and then when you run it, it's going to install into a directory. I created a directory on my SSD called Portable Apps, and it creates two folders and a program. A documents folder, where it keeps all of where you can store music, pictures, and videos, and the actual Portable Apps directory where all of your software is. So if you choose, and then it has a button, a start button. So basically, let me exit out of the software. And if I click here, it'll bring this little menu up. And it's sort of its own, oh, this is cool. It's actually showing, I was going to talk about this. When I ran it just now, or reran it, it determined that some of the software that I have installed has upgrades available, like Firefox, Chrome, KeyPass apparently has an update available now, WizFile and WizTree. And it does this automatically for you so that you don't have to worry about keeping your software up to date. You don't go into Firefox or Chrome I think I've never gone into the Firefox or Chrome browser upgrade feature and tried to upgrade from within the browser. I've always let the Portable Apps program update it because I don't know about the directory structure and if Firefox is be able to properly update itself. So I'm not going to do this now because it's going to tie up my computer. On the homepage, they have, I would highly recommend that everybody go to the apps page. It has over 82 gigabytes of software. And I don't know how to describe or explain the difference between there being 1,100 packages and 500 real ones. Um, I don't know what the difference is between a real portable app and a package,
Hmm.
but they claim over 1 billion downloads. And I've never encountered any registrations or bugs or any viruses or anything like that. It has development apps. It has some education, not very much education software. It's got a portable Bible for those of you who want that. It's got a bunch of games, all kinds of game software, graphics and pictures. So if you want to um, use a variety of software, but not necessarily go through the headache of installing it all on your machine, or maybe you have more than one computer and you don't want the hassle of upgrading and maintaining, two, three, four installations of the same program. You can run the portable version like I do. I run it on an external SSD that's the size of a flash drive. So it's got no cable. It plugs directly into the USB port. And I can then move this from machine to machine. And the apps go with me, my pictures go with me, my data goes with me, browser bookmarks and downloads go with me. You can run this on multiple computers in your home. You can have it on your keychain. I have it on a flash drive that I keep on my keychain. If I go to a hotel and I rarely ever do use the hotel business computer, but rather than using their browser to check my mail or their browser to do personal things, I just plug my flash drive in and I run Firefox off the flash drive. I just go into here and these are all the categories of software that I've installed. And under internet, you can see that I've got Firefox, Firefox private window, download manager, Chrome, Opera, Zoom. There's even a portable version of Zoom available. Um, it's not available through the Zoom website, I don't think, but it's available here.
Hmm.
And you can go to any machine and actually run the Zoom software. You could be on a library computer if it had a webcam and a microphone for you to use. I don't know that they do, but you could do that.
Hey, Drew,
Um,
Drew,
yes,
the Zoom one, does that let you only participate in a meeting or you can start a meeting?
it's the full Zoom software. So yeah, you can be a host.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't run it right now, but because I'm already in Zoom, but yeah, you can run Zoom. It's the full-blown Zoom software. I've installed LibreOffice as well as OpenOffice. For those of you who've never seen what OpenOffice looks like, this is the OpenOffice word processor. Doesn't take very long to open off of the external drive. Um, Getting back to the software list, there's lots of software, some of which you may have heard of, some of which you may not have. I have tried and experimented because I'm not installing it on Windows. I'm not screwing with my registry. I'm not adding menu items. I'm not, you're not, you can try all this stuff out and not contaminate your Windows PC, which is another good reason to go with this software. It's got FileZilla, it's got the download manager, it's got, here's your browsers, it's got Thunderbird. You can run your email off of a portable drive. It's got BitTorrent software. It's got music and video category. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Um, Graphics and picture software. PicPic, ShareX is a good program. PicPic, I know, is a good program. Um, Under music and video, It's got all kinds of stuff. It's got audio encoders, video encoders, a program to make audio extraction, CD, DVD burners, although those are not really used very much anymore. I've used DVD styler in the past to make DVD menus, although I haven't done it in the last few years. Um, and then it has office software, all kinds of office software, security software. It's got KeePass in here, Vericrypt, um, and all these utilities. It's got tons of utilities. One of the I'm just going to show you a couple of them. Under here, because this is sort of a Windows group, WizFile and WizTree I learned about through here. WizTree is a really nice way to analyze your disk. You tell it what disk you want it to run, which disk you want it to scan. I'll tell it to scan my pCloud drive, and that's how quickly it went through my entire pCloud drive. And now it's showing how many MP4s, how many ISOs, how many, all these different file types, and how much of a percentage it's taking up on my disk, and how much file size it's taking up on the disk. It's a very good way of learning what's taking up space on your disk. And then it has pictorial views down here. The green is all zip files, compressed files. The yellow is all, this kind of pukey yellow is all ISO files and where they are on the disk. And then you can click on the graphic and it actually will go to the file and you can delete it if you want to. It's a very handy little program and it's free. So I highly encourage everybody to look through here because this is where WizFile and WizTree are. And they have websites that you can go to and you can click on any of these and read more about them. And in here, after you install the software itself and you run this is all going to all be blank. And you go into this little apps area and you say that you want to get more apps. And then you can get them by category, by title, newly released or recently updated. If I search by category, it's going to basically show the same list that we just looked at. Only this list, it lets you actually install them. And you go through here and you pick out what you want. You click on whatever you want, and then you hit the install button and it loads it. And you have to have an active internet connection, obviously, to do the install. There's no need for me to show anything, into all the different software. You kind of get the concept of it. There is a folder here called Other. If you have an app that's available in a portable format, like Discord is available from their website, you can download a portable version of Discord. Discord wasn't available in here, so I just threw the portable folder onto the disk and it created this group for me. So I thought that was kind of handy. At this point, does anybody have any questions?
What was that Discord one that you got there?
Discord is
Kind
it's
of
a social program for communicating with friends and other groups. I'm a member of different Discord, different servers. Termux I belong to, BlueStacks, OBS Studio, a file manager, RustDesk, 2FAS, KSNP. This is the Central Florida Computer Society, where we have all of our, it's like a bulletin board. This is where we share information about art people post articles um, in different topics, can ask questions, you can video chat. You can do up to 25 people on a video chat for as long as you want without paying anything. Um, it's a good alternative to Zoom. You can share your desktop. You don't have as many of the Zoom controls, but you can do it for free.
What's the name of that one? Chris?
This is called Discord.
No, but I mean the one that you just shared, applicable to Zoom, same as Zoom for free. You mean Discord does
Uh,
it, or was that another program within your Discord, or it was Discord?
no, Discord itself has the ability to uh, if you're in a meeting with somebody, you
Coffee.
can I can go into coffee and chat,
Right.
and it's going to ask me to use my microphone, which I'm not going to let it do at this point. Um, but basically, this is you could use this instead of Zoom. We have small meetings on here, every week. I'm going to get out of here now so it doesn't bug me. Um, but you can learn. You can go to the Discord website, and if you create a Discord server and you have friends or family, and you get together and you all join a Discord server, you can video chat with each other like you can in Zoom. You can share your desktop. It works on cell phones. It works on tablets. It works on Windows, Linux, Mac. It's not a competitor to Zoom, but it's just one of the things it can do.
It's a kind of a form of social media that
Yeah.
allows you to do not only face to face through video conferencing um, type stuff, but you can also post articles. You can upload and download some files, and so on and so forth, and share things
hmm
with friends, family, or other members of another group.
And I use it also. I got into it primarily originally for tech support. There are some of the software programs that I use. Their tech support is provided in a Discord forum. If I were to go back in here again, which I don't know if I can do. Oops, I got it running twice now. Um, that was a boo-boo. You can go into, let's say, Termux has, you can get technical support if you have questions about Termux. For those of you who know what Termux is, it's kind of like a Linux on an Android phone. Um, so these are mostly all technical support forums. This is where I go for technical support running OBS Studio on Linux. If you have a question about it, this is where you get the answer from. Um, any other questions about portable apps?
Well, portable apps have existed on Windows base as is, and I've had many. Uh, Outside of this application, and one of them is like Rufus, to be able to
Yes.
take an ISO image or it might also handle IMG and transfer the
Rufus
content.
is in here.
Yeah. And Rufus, I've been having that without being in this application situation. And I know that that Netcher will, in place of a USB flash drive, you can use a USB connected SSD and get blazing speed compared to a flash drive. Um, but portable apps are not installed on Windows. They are downloaded or copied to a Windows system You can then create a Windows shortcut, if you wish, to put on your desktop or put it on your taskbar. But there's installation of a Windows program means that you are modifying the registry for various settings that application wants and needs. Uh,
Right.
Portable apps do not touch the registry. Therefore, if I say today I want to get rid of Rufus on my Windows system, I delete it and I delete the shortcut. That's it. There is
Mm-hmm.
no need for a program like Rebo uninstaller to not only uninstall the program with its uninstaller that's part of the application, but to scan for leftover entries in the registry and files left by the application so they can be deleted.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
when it comes to Zoom, anybody can join a Zoom meeting without having any kind of a webcam, whether it's built into the device or as a separate USB device. You are allowed in. You will just have your black image. You can put your name out there, but that's as far as you can go. You cannot. You hear the entire uh, meeting. You'll see whatever comes up on the screen by anybody sharing their screen, but you cannot ask questions or make your comments and other things other than through the chat. And many meetings, especially the host, is too busy to look at the chats until after the meeting is closed. So
Mm-hmm.
the end result is you can communicate. The only other way to do it is with a phone. With a phone, you can dial in to a as local as possible number to you, and then you can voice your questions, your comments, your statements, et cetera. But nobody can see you because there is no video related with a phone. So those are options for anybody who wants to join a meeting. All you need to do is log into Zoom and get into that meeting and enjoy whatever that meeting presents to you.
Mm-hmm.
Any,
Are there anybody else with a question or comment about the software? All right, and I will stop sharing
okay.
and return the meeting back to Tim.
Who's that? Alrighty. And get out of my face. Man. Okay. Now. Okay. I just learned either Sunday or Monday. I don't remember which anymore. Whoops. And I ain't going to do it that way. All right. Another tool that seems to be very much like what Drew just did, only I don't think they have the application. They just have the portable programs. And basically speaking, if I can, I'm manipulating 4 computers here. Now, I've only had a tiny bit of time to look at the screen in general. Interesting. Maybe it was Oregon. thought it was pine tree. I know it's pine something. Oh, wait a minute. Not true trees, it's tool. I'll get my head together one of these days. Free online tools. Now, some of these might be installable, some of them are portable. It's a mix. I have not researched this, how good it is, but as you can see up here, it's saying English and Spanish, so I'm suspecting that it may be European based. But it looks interesting. I want to eventually get into it. Mathematics, I'm just doing a calculator, online calculator. And this is what it might look like. If I go back here, single rule of three direct. I've never heard of this before, but for those who know what that means, that would be something. You get into colors, text, images, date, time, numbers, randomness, programming tools, various files, and videos. So I thought I'd toss that in before I get going on the other stuff. So if anybody is interested, that's Pine Tools, that's plural, .com.
So you're not really downloading these programs to your computer or flash drive. You're running them right here live.
I said up front, I have only learned about this recently. I have not had time to do much more than what I just showed you, period. What the reputation is, how it works, I haven't gotten into that. I'll leave up to you individually. Now, okay. Come on. Go for a little bit there. Seems like my machine's running a little slow. I'll give you a final review.
What happens at Windows 10 end of support? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for AskLeo.com. Here's a common question I'm hearing increasingly as the Windows 10 end of support date nears. Will Windows 10 keep working after its end of support? Can I keep using it? Or will Microsoft force me to upgrade to Windows 11? No, you won't be forced to upgrade. You can keep using it. It's important to understand the risks involved. One thing we've learned from being here before is that the risks may not be as horrific as some make them out to be. Windows 10 22H2 will be supported until October the 14th, 2025. The only thing that happens when support ends is that no further fixes are available, even for security-related issues. In fact, even now, as the date draws closer, security-related issues are the only fixes you're getting. It will keep working, but whatever Windows 10 looks like on October the 14th is exactly what it will be from then on. No changes, no fixes, no nothing. Now, for the first time, Microsoft is making extended security updates available to consumers who use Home and Pro editions. Sort of. Quoting their website, and for the first time ever, we're introducing an ESU program for personal use as well. The ESU program for consumers will be a one-year option available for $30. Program enrollment will be available closer to the end of support in 2025. So, yeah, for $30, you get 1 year of additional security updates beyond the October 14th, 2025 cutoff date. 1 year. After that, you're once again on your own. Essentially, you've simply punted the deadline 1 year further down the field. Now, just because Windows stops getting updates doesn't mean that the applications you use will stop getting updates. That depends entirely on the application vendor and when they decide to stop supporting Windows 10. Some may stop on Microsoft's date. Others may stop sometime thereafter. You simply need to monitor updates for the programs you care about. Someday, those updates will probably stop as well. It'll be up to you to decide if you care. Windows Security, on the other hand, will in fact get some updates for some time. I tend to think of it as separate from Windows itself. It has its own deadline, if you will. Just as if it were a third-party application, the scanner will continue to get updates for some time. The database of malware that it relies on will continue to be updated as well. Security bugs in Windows itself will not be fixed, but the security software looking for malware will stay current for some unspecified time. So, what's the risk? That's a great question. The gloom and doom scenario is that there's an unpatched vulnerability waiting to be found. Hackers will exploit it, and Microsoft won't fix it. The more pragmatic risk is that eventually your other software will no longer be supported. You'll have to figure out whether you can live with it or find alternatives. The other risk is that when your computer dies, you won't be able to get Windows 10 for its replacement. Once again, you'll face a decision. Move to the latest, most current version of Windows, or switch to something else entirely. Perhaps the most important step to keeping yourself safe is to make extra sure you're following proper security practices and that your security software continues to work and continues to be updated. If your security software is no longer supported, find an alternative immediately. Like I said, Windows Security should continue to receive updates for a while. In the past, Windows Security software continued to be updated for quite a time, actually, after Windows itself was past end of support. The other important step I recommend is my old standby: regular and complete backups. If something goes wrong, you'll want to restore to a backup. This will also protect you to some extent when Microsoft eventually takes existing Windows 10 updates and activation offline. That action would prevent you from downloading Windows 10 from scratch, but if you have a backup, you can still restore it. If what we're experiencing sounds perhaps hauntingly familiar, that's because it is. This is exactly what happened with Windows 7 some years ago, and even Windows XP before it. And in the light of many dire predictions of catastrophe and doom, nothing happened. There were no catastrophic malware outbreaks targeting Windows 7 or Windows XP. There was no list of known vulnerabilities that hackers kept secret until they knew they wouldn't be fixed. Nothing. Windows 7, Vista, and XP users were probably more affected by decreasing hardware and software support for the applications they cared about. I expect Windows 10's death to be very similar, a slow fade into obscurity. If you're running Windows 10, it's time to at least start thinking about Windows 11 if you can. But even if you don't, as long as you continue to use your computer safely, you should be fine. Eventually, you'll want to upgrade, either because the software you care about stops working, or you get a new machine with a new version of Windows pre-installed. For updates, for comments, for links related to this topic.
Okay, I'm stopping that. That here, if you want a text type version of what he just discussed, you go to this site here to get his text versions. Now, one thing that comes up in this here is that Microsoft for $30 a year only gives you a security updates. It'll double that for year 2, and it'll double that again for year 3, and you get nothing else. A competitive product is called Zero Patch. I think it's .com. I don't know all their policy, but the first year is $30, just like Microsoft. But they give you a whole lot of updates that Microsoft is not providing. And I don't know about second and third year on your applications that you use. If you use a browser, eventually they may stop supporting those on different dates by different vendors. Um, Security software is another key one that, depending on whether you're using Microsoft's Windows Defender on 10 or you're using third-party AV tools, you have to worry about that for starters. So there are various things you got to take into consideration. Who is Norm Martin? Oh boy, Norton Bloom. I know I butchered his name. At any rate, he's an ex 18-year employee of Microsoft who left in 2001. He's created this Ask Leo and been online for years. He does articles, he does troubleshooting for some people to give articles that others, along with the person having the problem, might be able to use. Comments, personal views, etc., etc. But he gives a very common sense approach, single topic per video or article. Now I'm going to move on to here.
No, no one is forcing you to buy a new machine. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for AskLeo.com. Here's a collection of comments that I'm seeing often. It's all about Microsoft wanting to sell new computers and creating more e-waste. MS is working with PC manufacturers to force new hardware sales. All about forcing more expensive computers on us. My graveyard now has a perfectly good XP, Vista, and soon to be 2 Windows 10 computers. I'll be forced to buy a new computer when I already have 4 perfectly good computers. All of these are examples of comments relating to Windows 11's new hardware requirements. The perception is that if our existing computers aren't capable of running Windows 11, we're being forced to throw them away and buy new ones. Some even believe it's a conspiracy to sell more PCs. I'm going to sound a little frustrated here because no one is being forced to do anything. You do not have to get a new machine. You do not have to throw away your old machine, and there is no conspiracy. Here are some options. The most common recommendation I have when I see people complaining about this so-called forced purchase: don't get a new machine. In fact, don't change a thing. Stay with your existing machine running Windows 10. It'll keep running just fine. Here's a complete list, total list of absolutely everything that happens at Windows 10 end of support. Beginning on October 14th, 2025, Windows 10 will receive no further bug fixes, even if security related. That's it. That's the entire list. The machines will keep running. More importantly, security software, including Windows Defender, will continue to work and will continue to get updates. Other Microsoft software, including Office and potentially even other Microsoft utilities you see in Windows, will continue to work and they will continue to get updates. Non-Microsoft software will continue to work and continue to get updates. Software for your hardware, aka drivers, will also continue to work and continue to get updates. Now, how long that will all be true is an open question, of course, and it will vary depending on the specific hardware and the software involved. But it will most assuredly not come to an end on October 14. In fact, much of that may continue for years. Just ask folks who are still using Windows 8 and Windows 7. The only thing you might need to do is realize that, again, quoting, Windows 10 will receive no further bug fixes even if security related. Meaning that you'll need to be extra security conscious as you move forward. Do all the things you should be doing to keep yourself and your technology secure. Honestly, that's stuff you should be doing already anyway. So even that represents little, if any, change. All right, option number 1A, I'll call it, extended security updates. Microsoft has announced that you will be able to purchase 1 year of security updates to Windows 10 for $30. For people who purchase this ESU, it changes the statement, beginning October 14th, 2025, Windows 10 will receive no further bug fixes even if security related, to this statement, beginning October 14, 2026, Windows 10 will receive no further bug fixes even if security related. That's the only thing that changes. Everything else I discussed above remains the same. At this writing, Microsoft has not released any further details, and the ESU is not yet available for purchase. Option number 2, install Linux. This is probably the single most common comment made on the YouTube videos I've got out there discussing a variety of Microsoft and Windows 11 related issues. Switch to Linux. Many of those commenters either have or plan to switch to Linux when Windows 10's end of support date rolls around. It's a legitimate and very reasonable option. It just may not work for everyone. Oh, it'll definitely install and run on your existing Windows 10 machine. But you gotta realize it's not Windows. It's similar, but different user interface, something to get used to. Windows applications do not run on Linux. That means you will need to find Linux alternatives for the programs you rely on. And good support and documentation can be difficult to find. But depending on how you use your computer, Linux can most definitely be an option. No new machine required. Option number 3, hacking Windows 11. So I'll be honest and tell you that I have mixed feelings on this one. There are techniques to install Windows 11 on hardware that technically doesn't support Windows 11. I've written articles on a couple of the techniques and they appear to work. The issue is that Microsoft, of course, doesn't like this. They have suggested that Windows 11 installed on hardware that isn't supported by Windows 11 will not receive updates. Right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. It's also unclear which updates they mean. Does it mean only Windows 11 updates? Updates for Windows Security and Windows Defender? Anything that's updated via Windows Update? We just don't know at this time. If this is a risk you're willing to take, honestly, I'd rather you stick with option number 1. Sticking with Windows 10 seems less risky than not getting updates to an operating system that is still in active development. Option number 4, switch hardware. Now, before I go into this, I want to be super clear. You do not have to buy new hardware. But you can, of course, choose to buy new hardware. There are generally 3 options that people consider at this point. 1, get a Windows 11 compatible machine. While you'll have to get used to the changes in Windows 11, this is probably the easiest. Number 2, get a Mac. There's much more to get used to, and in many ways this is similar to switching to Linux, but Apple has a much higher reputation for quality in both its hardware and its software. They can be pricey, but for people tired of Microsoft's antics, it might very well be a reasonable option. Consider a Chromebook. The best way to describe a Chromebook is kind of like an Android phone masquerading as a laptop, but without the phone. If you primarily use your computer for web surfing and email, this can be a safe and less expensive alternative. Or, as I said, you could just keep using your Windows 10 machine running Windows 10. My honest bottom line recommendation is that if you are at all concerned, choose option number 1. Keep using Windows 10. Yeah, sure, someday, you might bump into a reason that could force the issue. Or someday you'll just get a new machine for other reasons with a future version of Windows pre-installed. But until then, there's no reason to panic, and there is certainly absolutely no reason to throw away a perfectly good piece of hardware if it's working well for you. For updates, for comments, for links related.
Now, one other thing I'm going to inject here. See if I can get this one. Okay, this is the Zero patch that's competing with Microsoft's ESU. And you can go to the site zeropatch.com to see what's what. And forget where it's at. Come on. There we go. By the way, if you want, you can read this in German because it comes out of Germany. Okay. Now, for the first year, this is Microsoft competitor. There's a pro version and an enterprise version. I'm sure nobody's going to do the enterprise. I'm speculating there won't be that many pros either. But on the patching, even for this product, is 0-day exploits. And whereas if you hit pro, you get all this other support in patches and stuff as well that may be at end of life, etc. So it's kind of a case where you pick your poison and live with it, or you don't live with it. Now,
Why didn't Microsoft fix the bug I care about? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for AskLeo.com. Here's a question. I've complained about this bug for years and no one has an answer. It's horrible. Forums are full of people who are experiencing this bug and no one has an answer. It's been there for years and Microsoft continues to just ignore us. Obviously, Bill's too busy trying to make more money by forcing us to upgrade and doesn't have time for bugs that impact lots of people. Why won't they fix this horrible bug? I want to be clear here. I am not talking about a specific bug. This is in general about folks who discover something that to them is a horrible, terrible problem, and they just can't understand why it's not fixed immediately. The question above is a composite of questions, comments, and rants that I've received. Every time, someone is convinced that they're dealing with what they consider to be the most important bug ever, and Microsoft, hell, Bill Gates himself, is ignoring him. There's usually no satisfying folks who've landed in this extreme position. I often suggest, and it's an honest suggestion, that they might be better served by using a Mac or Linux because they're so dissatisfied with Microsoft and Windows. For those who are interested, though, I'd like to discuss how companies decide what bugs get fixed and why a bug you consider important might not be one of them. I'll also discuss why Bill Gates is not only not ignoring you, but probably doesn't even know that you, or the bug you care about, even exists. I want to be clear also, this is not about making excuses for Microsoft. They do screw up and miss really important things from time to time. More often than not, it's a case of not clearly understanding the priorities of their users. But even that's no excuse. Sometimes they just get it wrong. Really, this is about understanding the process and the incredible complexity of fixing bugs. Hopefully, we can gain a little understanding of why a bug might not get resolved in a timely fashion or at all. Now, I'm not only not making excuses for Microsoft, this information applies industry-wide. Even though I'll use Microsoft in the discussion, it applies equally to any of 100 other software manufacturers. I also don't want to minimize or gloss over the impact of whatever it is you're experiencing. These problems can have a significant impact on how you use your computer every day. I am taking your experience seriously, as does Microsoft, believe it or not, but I also want to be very, very pragmatic. My goal for you is to understand the realistic chances of getting your issue addressed. Let's look at how companies make decisions about how things work, how they prioritize fixing bugs, and how difficult it is to fix bugs, and maybe even a little bit about who we should blame. Sometimes, just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's a bug. It may annoy the heck out of you, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or accidental. Microsoft does research called usability studies to determine the best way for things to work. They do lots of research. They then update and refine their products based on the feedback from real people who are using the proposed changes long before those changes ever see the light of day. Based on that feedback, many changes never even make it into the product. But there's no pleasing everyone. If 990 people out of 1,000 really like a proposed user interface, and 10 hate it, Microsoft's going to choose the one that pleases the most. If you're one of the 10, you are out of luck. Not a bug. It's a decision appealing to the majority of users, a majority of which you, unfortunately, just aren't a part. Now, I'm certain also that there are bugs, actual bugs, in Windows that are decades old and will never be fixed. Why? Because the number of people affected by the bug or the severity of the bug's impact is so small, it's just not important enough to fix. Let's say you find 1,000 people who agree with you on that bug that bugs you the most. The number of Windows installations recently exceeded like 1 billion machines sometime in 2014. It's even higher now. Your 1,000 people represent 0.0001% of Windows users. The fact that 1,000 is a tiny fraction of Windows users isn't enough to get the bug ignored, but it is one factor. Data loss is a more significant factor. One classification assigned to problem reports is the concept of data loss, whether the bug could cause the user to lose data. That could be as simple as a crash that causes you to lose what you're working on right now, or a failure unexpectedly wiping out all or part of the data stored on your hard disk. Data loss matters. If a part of the screen isn't redrawn as it should be, or a mouse pointer disappears for a moment, or an information window closes unexpectedly, those are all less serious than something that causes a user to lose data. So even if thousands of people are experiencing the same problem, that might be tiny compared to all the users who are not. And if the problem is mostly non-destructive, you can see that it might not get as highly prioritized as other issues, including future product and new feature development. One of Windows' most interesting features is its ability to be extended by third-party hardware vendors. Today's version of Windows can work with hardware that hasn't even been dreamed of yet, because when that hardware comes into existence, the manufacturer can write software, aka drivers, that integrates with Windows to support the new device. The key phrase here: the manufacturer can write software that integrates with Windows. Microsoft doesn't write and isn't necessarily responsible for every bit of software used by Windows to run your machine. What that means is that some bugs you might perceive as being in Windows aren't in Windows at all. They're in the software added to Windows by other vendors. Microsoft can and does pass along reports of issues with third-party software, but they don't control how or when or even if those bugs get resolved. They, like you, are at the mercy of those third-party software authors. This isn't limited to drivers. There are third-party applications and add-ons often perceived as part of Windows, even though they are not. Their failure is often reported as about Windows when the fault actually lies elsewhere. Now, one thing that I think is hard to get your brain around sometimes is that fixing a bug, even a simple one, is neither simple nor cheap. Because of the unimaginable complexity of the systems that we now take for granted, the ramification of even the smallest bug fix is often impossible to predict. It's not at all uncommon for a tiny fix over here to break something else over there. Hence, a good software vendor will test even the smallest fix thoroughly. What that means is that the software needs to be run through a complete testing cycle to make sure the fix actually didn't break something else. Now imagine what it means to test every single feature in Windows. Now imagine doing that for every different edition of Windows, Home, Pro, whatever. Now imagine doing it again for every edition in every language. Now imagine trying to do all of that quickly. The upshot is that the cost of even the simplest of bug fixes is surprisingly high. There's an old software engineering maximum that says a bug found by the customers is 10 times more expensive as one found by pre-ship testing. A bug found by pre-ship testing is 10 times as expensive as a bug found by the engineer writing the software. A bug found by the engineer is 10 times as expensive as a bug found in the design before software is even written. What all that really means is that the earlier bugs are found, the less expensive they are to fix. Or conversely, the later they are found, meaning you and I find them when the product is released, the more expensive they are to fix. So you can imagine there's a lot of pressure to fix bugs as early in the development cycle as possible. There are untold thousands upon thousands of bugs that get fixed before the product is ever released. And yet, some make it through regardless. This is the nature of software development. There is no such thing as bug-free software. Period. No exceptions. It's also the nature of the complexity of the system. Honestly, there are days when I'm amazed it works at all. What all this does, though, is it puts software vendors in a no-win situation. We complain about software that takes forever to arrive, and then we complain that the software has bugs. In the real world, those two things are directly at odds with one another. It takes time and discipline to write and test software so that it has as few bugs as possible. Conversely, software that is rushed to market because people are clamoring for it or because the press is pointing fingers is likely to have more than the average number of bugs. We can't have it both ways. Every software release, I don't care who it's from, is a compromise. Engineers always plead for just a few more days to fix a few more bugs. I've been that engineer. And marketing and salespeople complain that every delay results in massive market share or revenue loss. The reality, of course, is somewhere in between. Some releases strike the right balance. Others don't. So, I'm not trying to say that bugs never get fixed. Bugs do get fixed, just not all of them. If you encounter something that isn't working as you expect, look for solutions. There's a tremendous amount of information and resources available on the internet, including, hopefully, Ask Leo. If there are no solutions to be found, report the problem. Just don't get overly frustrated, or try not to get overly frustrated if no fix is forthcoming. And don't immediately jump to the conclusion that your feedback is being ignored. That is highly unlikely. Instead, Focus on finding workarounds or ways to avoid the problem. If it really is a bug that is terribly impactful to you, that might mean switching to a different software solution from some other vendor. Now, I got to talk a little bit about Bill. I scratch my head when people rail against Bill Gates for perceived issues with Microsoft or its products. I'm not sure what it is about Microsoft that causes people to blame Bill personally for all of its faults and failings. Bill hasn't worked directly at Microsoft since 2008, and he left the board of directors in 2020. While he may still be informally advising folks at Microsoft, it's certainly not at the level of individual features and bugs. In other words, Bill Gates is not and never was personally responsible for the features you don't like or the bugs you encounter. Your ire at him? Completely wasted. Bottom line, be pragmatic about the bugs you encounter or the behaviors you don't like. I'm certainly not saying accept everything, but be realistic about what's likely to be fixed or changed to your liking. If you can't or don't like what you're dealing with, look for alternatives that work better for you. For updates for
If you're using Windows 10 or 11, then I highly recommend you change the settings we're talking about today before it's too late. Stay tuned. You know, I am convinced at this point that Microsoft is anti-repair. The reason I believe this is because for years, Microsoft has built mechanisms into Windows that would help you repair and extend the life of your Windows PC. But now, they're just arbitrarily disabling them. Seriously, these mechanisms are still part of Windows, but they're just turned off. These mechanisms specifically are System Restore and the registry backup. Now, I've covered this topic before, but I want to add to it, and it's honestly worth repeating, because chances are, if you have a computer that was built after 2019, then you have these disabled by default. So today, I'm going to show you how to turn them back on, but first, I got to pay some bills. So check out today's sponsor. Is your copy of Windows 10 unactivated? Well, it does on re-enabling registry backups in Windows. I was hoping that Microsoft wouldn't re-enable this feature. Unfortunately, not only have they not re-enabled it, but it's actually gotten worse. You see, back when I made the original video, I had recently had a computer that was stuck running System Restore. It just sat there for hours, so finally I unplugged it. I know, I don't need to hear it. It was stupid, and as a result, it corrupted the registry. However, anyone who has been working in tech for a long period of time knows that Windows makes backups of the Windows registry on a relatively regular basis. So I went to the folder where the registry backups were, and it was empty. So unfortunately, it left me with no other way to fix the computer than reloading Windows. So that's what I had to do. So a repair that should have been relatively easy turned out to be impossible because Microsoft decided to turn off a feature way back in 2018 in Windows 10 1803. And apparently, I didn't know about it. So Microsoft claims that they did this in order to save disk space because, you know, the 2 megabytes that a registry backup takes up is going to make or break a Windows install. But of course, to store 250 megabytes of telemetry, that's fine. And now that Windows Recall is a thing, it's supposed to take up between 25 and 150 gigs. But no, we need to save 2 megabytes in registry backups. But at the time, it wasn't completely about space used by Microsoft because they claimed the registry backups were no longer necessary because of System Restore, which actually kind of makes sense if you think about it. But unfortunately, they've disabled that too now. So not only have they taken registry backups away, but they've also taken System Restore away. These are 2 mechanisms within Windows that I have used to repair thousands of computers. But now, if these mechanisms aren't enabled manually before there's a problem, then when it comes to repairing these systems, they're probably going to be reloaded now. Now, I'm aware that this video isn't going to reach the entire population. So chances are the next computer that I run into that has issues like this, I'm not going to be able to fix them. I'm just going to have to reload Windows. However, if you run into these problems down the road, I'm going to show you how to turn these features back on so that you don't have to deal with it. And also, I would highly recommend sharing this video with your friends and family. But with that said, let's get into it. So here we are in Windows 11, and this should work exactly the same in Windows 10 as well. So what you're going to want to do is open your Start menu and search for regedit. And the first thing we're doing here is we're actually going to re-enable registry backups, and then afterwards I'll go through and I'll show you how to actually get them to work, because they don't work right out of the box, unfortunately. And then we'll also do system restore as well. But what you're going to want to do is go to local machine. And then from local machine, you want to go into system, then current control set. And then from current control set, you want to go into control. Then you want to go into session manager. So we're going to scroll down. All this is in alphabetical order here. So we're going to go into session manager. And then from there, we're going to go into configuration manager. And then from here, what you're going to want to do is right click and create a new DWORD 32-bit value. And then you want to name this value enable periodic backup. And then go ahead and hit enter. And then we want to open this up and we want to change the value to 1. This will enable periodic backups of your registry. And at this point, you can go ahead and close this and restart your computer in order for that to take effect. So now that we've enabled registry backups, there's still one more thing that we need to do. Unfortunately, since this feature has been disabled for like 6 years now, the task that's used to initiate the registry backups is unfortunately broken. So we need to initiate the task manually, and ironically, we're going to be doing that with Task Scheduler. So let's jump back on the computer now that it's rebooted, and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so here we are back in Windows 11, and if we open up File Explorer, we can go to the C drive, go into Windows, and then we're going to want to go down to System 32. Then from System 32, we want to go down into Config, and then from here, you can see the folder Reg Backup. Now, if you open that up, as you can see, I have the Reg Backup files because we just enabled Registry Backup. But if you notice, they're all 0 kilobytes. So it didn't actually back anything up. It created empty files of all the different registry stores. So what we're going to have to do is fix this so it actually backs up our registry. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and close this, and we're going to start up our task scheduler. And then from here, the task that we're actually looking for here, I'm going to go ahead and move that out of the way. The task we're looking for is under Microsoft. And then from there, we want to go into Windows. And then we want to go into registry. So we're going to have to scroll down a little bit here. And this is all in alphabetical order. So go ahead and find registry right here. And then right here, the reg idle backup is the key that normally backs up your registry. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work. It backs up empty files when it does backup. So what we're going to want to do is right click here and create a new task. And then for the name of this new task, I just call it reg backup. And then from there, we want to make sure to set this up as a system account. So go ahead and change user and group, go to advanced, hit find now, and scroll down until you find system right here. And then go ahead and hit OK. And then hit OK again. And then from here, make sure you check run with the highest privileges. And at that point, we want to run over to triggers and then go ahead and hit new. And at this point, you just want to set it to whenever you want it to back up. Now, I'm going to back mine up at startup every single time. However, you can have yours do it once a week or on a schedule or on login or at idle or whenever you want. So I'm going to do mine at startup. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and leave everything exactly the same. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And then go over to actions. Now, this is what you're wanting the task to do. And all this task is going to do is manually run the reg idle backup. And to do that, go ahead and create a new action. And then from here, I'm gonna paste this to make it a little easier for me, but I'll go ahead and have this down in the description below, as well as it should be printed on the screen right now. But essentially what you're doing is you're running Task Scheduler, you're telling it to run a specific task, and then you're telling it the path of the task right here, which is the reg idle backup, which is this one right here, which is kind of funny that we're running the task from Task Scheduler, but unfortunately, that's just what we have to do. By running this task manually, it will properly back up the registry. By letting it run automatically, for some reason it doesn't. When I go ahead and hit OK, it's going to tell me that it's going to take all of the following arguments and throw them down into the bottom. And if you go and edit this right here, you'll see what it means. The program is just task scheduler. And then right here is the arguments itself that it runs, but that's okay. If you type it all in the original program thing here, it just throws it down into the arguments folder. It works fine. And then from this point, go ahead and go over to conditions. And then on conditions, what I typically do is disable the power management, because I want this to do this every single time it boots up. Doesn't matter if it's on AC power, doesn't matter if it's on battery, doesn't matter. I want it to run all the time, no matter what. So after that, the next thing is go ahead and click on settings right here. And the next thing that I would do is this run task as soon as possible after schedule start is missed. I go ahead and check this one too, just in case it misses it at startup. It will run it as soon as it misses it. And then go ahead and hit OK. And at that point, the task is done. And you can reboot your computer and it should back up properly. However, we're going to test it right here by just running this task right here. And then once it runs, we're going to go ahead down to our folder here. Go into C drive, go into Windows, go down into System 32, go into Config, then go into Registry Backup, and as you can see, now there's actual data inside of these backup files, and we should have a properly backed up registry that will back up every time the system reboots. So in the event that your system gets corrupted or your registry gets corrupted and it doesn't successfully boot, you should have a registry backup from the previous boot. So at this point, your computer should make automatic registry backups every time you reboot your computer, just like we talked about. So now that that's done, let's jump back on the computer and turn back on System Restore. Okay, luckily System Restore is way easier. Go ahead and close all this stuff down, click on your Start button, and just search for System Restore. And go ahead and click on the Create a Restore Point link right here. And then from there, you should get this little System Properties menu up. And as you can see, your local C drive should say System Protection Off if you have a more modern computer. And to fix this, all you do is go ahead and highlight it, click Configure, and then hit Turn on System Protection. You can change the amount of disk space that it's allowed to use. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at default for 2%, but you can change this to whatever percentage you want. And then once you're done, go ahead and hit OK. And at that point, System Restore should be turned on. Now, if you want, you can create a restore point too. So let's go ahead and create one. I'm just going to call mine Cyber CPU and hit create, and it should create an initial restore point. And then at this point, whenever it runs Windows Update or installs a new program or does whatever its normal scheduling is, it should schedule and create a system restore point at certain intervals for you. So now that you've re-enabled the registry backups and system restore, let's hope you never actually need them. But if you do, your chances of saving your Windows install drastically increase. Now, if anyone from Microsoft is watching this video, I have to vent my frustration for a minute. The vast majority of Windows installs are never going to need these features. In fact, I bet you probably 1 out of 100 users will ever even run into a situation where they need to run System Restore. And probably 1 out of 1,000 are going to need to restore a registry from a backup. So yes, for the vast majority of Windows users, these features just waste disk space. But let's think about an analogy that we can compare this to. The vast majority of people on the road will never experience an airbag deployment. In fact, I will bet that only a small fraction of cars manufactured will ever initiate an airbag deployment. Airbags are clunky and expensive, and they take up space. I remember when I was growing up, I was able to use custom steering wheels, and that just isn't possible anymore because of the stupid horn button that has to be a giant airbag on it. But for the small percentage of people that do experience an airbag deployment, that airbag is pretty important. Now, I admit, maybe this isn't the best analogy comparing system restore and registry backups to airbag deployments. But imagine if an auto manufacturer included an airbag in their vehicle and then disabled it so it doesn't deploy during an accident. Believe it or not, that actually happened to somebody in my family once, but we won't talk about that. That would be a pretty stupid thing though, right? That's exactly what Microsoft has done to System Restore and the registry backups. These features are still a part of Windows. They're just turned off so that people that need them, well, you're screwed. With the amount of data that people store on their computers, the health of those computers is extremely important. People keep their entire lives on their computers. I mean, I don't even have photo albums anymore. We have picture folders that literally contain our entire lives. They used to say that in an emergency, you should always have your photo albums stored in a place where you can grab them quickly. And that's all on our computers now. Now, though, this does bring up a very good point. We should all be doing regular backups regardless of these features being enabled in Windows. But as a technician, I can tell you right now that the vast majority of Windows users do not back up their data at all. I mean, like literally nothing. I do what I can to do my part to convince people the importance of backups, but people typically don't call me until they have problems. And when those problems arise, I need all the tools possible at my disposal to be able to recover their computer to the way it was before whatever happened to cause them to call me. So when I get a system that could have easily been fixed using a system restore point or fixing a corrupted registry backup, those tools are available to me, but turned off, they do me no good. And it literally gives me no other choice but to reload Windows. And I'm going to let the customers know why. I'm going to tell them that Microsoft has no problem wasting 150 gigabytes of storage by spying on them with Windows Recall, but they can't spare 2 megabytes for a registry backup. To be honest with you though, these kind of decisions kind of wakes up the conspiracy theorist in me. Did Microsoft determine that turning these features off leads people to purchase more computers? Maybe. I have no idea. Maybe a percentage of people don't bother having their old computer fixed and just buy a new one. I mean, I've truly been trying to think of an excuse to justify turning these features off, and I just can't think of one. Let me know in the comments below if you can think of why Microsoft would have done this. But with that said, at least we have the ability to re-enable these features, and I hope this video never helps you, because if it does, it means something catastrophic happened, and that requires you to use these features to try to save your computer. And hopefully that doesn't happen, and these features just waste disk space, at least a couple megabytes of it. But in the meantime, there's another feature that you really should be taking advantage of that unfortunately needs to be used a lot more often than these features here, and that's a backup. So if you're not backing your system up regularly, then check out this video where I show you how to set up backup using Windows File History. It doesn't cost you anything to back up your data, except maybe the cost of an external hard drive. But as always, you guys have a great day.
Now, he mentions using file history. It either has been disabled or eliminated in 24H2, or it will be soon. I don't remember the exact details, but I have read that that feature is going to disappear, probably because most people don't know it exists and don't know how to use the feature to recover from a catastrophe. I'm gonna come here. Microsoft is offering a free AI skills training for all. It's not too late to sign up. It's over a 50-day period. Free access through May 28th. So if you're interested in AI and learning more about it than what you currently know, you might want to take advantage of that. I'll have a
Guys,
handout.
today we're talking about switching to Linux after Windows 10. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. I'll go through some of the things to expect when you're switching over and some of the options you might have available to you if you're still on Windows 10 right now. And that's what we'll go through here, and then we'll talk about installing Linux and having a look at Linux. So first, Windows 10 end of life ends on October 14th, 2025. So I've broken this down into 3 groups of people. So there's people who can upgrade to Windows 11 and want to upgrade to Windows 11. Now is the time to do that, because obviously end of life is 14th of October 2025. You can install Windows 11 and get set up and get used to it. Also, there will be people who can upgrade to Windows 11 but just don't want to. We're going to be talking about some of the options available for you as well. And there will be a large number of people who can't upgrade to Windows 11 because of the unsupported hardware. Now, before we continue, let's have a quick word from today's video sponsor, CD Key Sales. If you're looking for cheap Windows 10 Pro or cheap Windows 11 Pro OEM key keys, then check out the links in the video. Security updates. This means that this will put the computer at serious risk, not right away, but in the future it will start to degrade over time. This means that any sort of security vulnerabilities will not be bothered to be patched by Microsoft because the operating system has reached end of life. Next thing to consider is if you've got an antivirus program. A lot of people believe that when you install an antivirus program, it's going to make you safe. Unfortunately, if Microsoft do not update their operating system, it just means it's not going to protect you the way you think it is, because those vulnerabilities are holes in the operating system that cannot be patched, and even an antivirus program is not going to stop those exploits. Now, there is an option to extend security updates, which is what Microsoft are planning to roll out. This is a $30 fee for 1 year, which will give you another year at least with your old computer to continue to use it. This is an option available to you. There's also other options out there like LTSE versions, which you can purchase, but I'm not going to go through that in this particular video because I want to keep this as simple as possible and talk about options available. Now, what about people that want to go offline? Well, that is an option available to you. You can completely remove the Ethernet cable and Wi-Fi from the computer and continue to use that computer for as long as you like because you're not connected to the internet. Let's talk about Linux. So if you want to use another operating system, Linux is an option that you can use. This is Linux Mint. It's free to use. It's open source. It will work with your old hardware. And basically, once you get it installed on your computer, you'll receive security updates, and also you'll get feature updates for this particular operating system as well from Linux. It's open source. And again, it will have different learning curve to Windows, but it is an option which is out there for you, which will give your old computer a new lease of life. The thing you need to understand with Linux is there's differences between Linux and Windows because obviously they're 2 different operating systems. So if there is certain requirements that you need from Windows, then you need to understand when you go over to Linux, some of those requirements might go away because Linux might not run with those particular software, for instance.
Okay, I'm going to stop this here due to the current time. I want to say that one other of the ways of dealing with the end of 10, unless you're going to stay on it and take the risk, all the other options, you do not want to wait to the last minute to start playing with it by having it available while your 10 system still works and is getting its updates. If you do that, then your transition to whatever new option, such as Windows 11, such as Linux, Mac OS, you can play around and take your time learning the new environment, no matter how much time it takes, so that when you stop using the 10, you just move into the new stuff and forget about 10 existing. I do have one other one. I'll just briefly start up here, and I have a handout.
What's the difference between Windows 10 and Windows 11? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for AskLeo.com. You know, this might seem like a really odd question to ask right now. After all, Windows 11 has been out for, well, several years now. However, with the impending end of Windows 10 support, and with its still large installed base, and with Windows 11 being a somewhat moving target, the question is actually more relevant than ever. If you've got Windows 10 and are considering Windows 11, what's the difference? Let's compare and contrast and complain just a little. Now, I do want to point out that this isn't going to be a really deep technical explanation of the differences between the two operating systems. There are plenty of places for that, and honestly, the average user, the average consumer, the average Windows user, you don't care about any of that. You don't need to know any of that. So, with that little caveat out of the way, let's talk about what I've referred to as the elephant in the motherboard, the hardware requirement. By far, the most controversial difference is Windows 11's new security-related hardware requirements. That includes Trusted Platform Module version 2, TPM, a UEFI, Secure Boot Capable, which replaces a traditional BIOS that we've used in previous machines, and a compatible 64-bit processor. So some other baseline requirements have changed as well. There's no 32-bit version. Minimum RAM requirements have increased from 2 to 4 gigabytes. Minimum disk space has increased from 20 gigabytes to 64 gigabytes. DirectX 12 graphics device driver software is required. It was previously DirectX 9. And the minimum screen resolution is now 1280 by 720, which is an increase from the old 800 by 600. Now, this latter set of other baseline requirements, that kind of a change is actually pretty traditional from one version of Windows to another. In fact, one version of an operating system to another. It's the restrictions imposed by that first list, however, most specifically the CPU requirement and the TPM requirement, that has generated a fair amount of controversy since they actually preclude many existing older machines from running Windows 11. All right, once you fire up Windows 11 for the first time, you'll notice that it looks a little different. Another controversial, though perhaps less impactful change, is that the Start menu is, by default, in the middle of the taskbar. Now, you can move it to the left if you want to, but the taskbar itself can't be placed anywhere other than the bottom. Unlike Windows 10 and previous versions, where you could stick it to the side, the bottom, the top, the left, the right, wherever you wanted. Can't do that anymore. There are also a number of what I would refer to as traditional changes, the kinds of things that change with every Windows version. For example, there's some cosmetic changes. Rounded corners are back, apparently. Softer colors, new animations, transparency effects, and so forth. Now, there are a selection of other differences that I've culled from the Microsoft Windows 11 specifications page. Again, I've culled them to focus on the kinds of things that an average user, a real person, might notice or potentially even care about. For example, Cortana, the app, is gone. Actually, she's been gone for a while. Microsoft Edge with IE mode replaces Internet Explorer 11. Mail, Calendar, and People have been replaced with the new Outlook. S mode is only available for Windows Home Edition. Honestly, I'd avoid S mode anyway. Windows 11 does not support disabling the return of internet search results when you search. Named groups and folders of apps are no longer supported in the Start menu, and the layout of the Start menu is not resizable. In that same vein, live tiles, things that you could put in the Start menu that would do things, they're gone. Tablet mode is gone. The wallet is removed. The Mixed Reality Portal app, the Windows Mixed Reality for Steam VR and Steam VR Beta, all gone. WordPad is removed. This one kind of hurts. Widgets are added. Passkeys are added natively to Windows Hello. There are security additions such as what I would refer to as reputation-based installation blocks Microsoft calls it Smart Screen. They've been added or improved. And application interfaces have some changes, the most notable being that Windows File Explorer has a new look and feel to it. Snipping tool has kind of changed and consumed some of the other snip-related tools, and so forth. The full list is somewhat longer and occasionally very esoteric, but you can find it on the Microsoft website. The article for this video will have links to exactly that. The items above, like I said, they represent what I feel most average users might actually notice or care about. Now, under the hood, there are many changes under the hood that don't necessarily change how you see or interact with Windows 11, but rather they are intended to perform its overall performance and or security. Many of these changes, interestingly enough, are positioned specifically as relating to gaming, gaming interaction, and gaming performance. It's unclear whether the improvement impacts non-gaming activities. My expectation is that while some might, many will not. I will tell you that my experience using both Windows 10 and Windows 11, performance appears similar for non-gaming tasks. Other changes like so-called virtualization-based security, kernel DMA protection, and others do represent additional security protections. I've also seen claims that Windows 11 has made an assortment of changes to improve both boot time and the performance of applications currently being used, in other words, what we would call your foreground applications. Much like the gaming improvements, it's unclear if these improvements are things you'll even notice. I haven't. Now, there's a set of complaints that get bundled into complaining about Windows 11, but they're not really Windows. Certainly, they're from Microsoft, and they might be interwoven into Windows, maybe even more tightly than we want, but they are separate from Windows. By those, I mean OneDrive, Edge, Office, Office 365, Microsoft 365, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and whatever they call it next week. Outlook and Outlook New. Copilot itself, though this integration is actually getting tighter every day. So the line here is definitely blurring, particularly with what are called Copilot Plus PCs. What happens to this set of features, though, is independent of Windows itself. What I mean by that is that there's a very good chance you'll experience some of their changes and updates regardless of which version of Windows you're actually running.
Okay, I got to stop it there because of time. If you have any questions or comments,